Spain, a lot of them will not be able to speak Spanish. So all you've got to have is a list in English of what these documents are, and then if they want to look at them in any depth, they can ask the liaison officer to help in any translation that's necessary. Now, EPT. I did say I'd come back to this one, and I really do need to come back to this one. This is one I think could be a problem for many of the veterinary schools within Europe. So just remind you again what we mean by EPT. This is where your students go outside the faculty, outside the school, to gain experience. And I would be surprised if a lot of schools within Spain don't use this. And so the question naturally is, well, if you do, what about the QA mechanisms? How do you know that a provision, and I think this morning I used the example of an abattoir, how do you know that students going to abattoir A are getting the same quality of provision as abattoir B? What proof have you got? Not easy to show. And so it will vary to some extent depending what the EPT is. But you could, on abattoirs, you could have done some research on what the abattoirs do, how many animals they see, the quantity of animals, the species of animals. What is the OV, the official veterinarian in the abattoir? How involved will they be with the students? Will they be giving time up to teach the students? Are the students given practical experience? I remember visiting, it was in Belgium, where the students actually were, under supervision, able to stun the cows we were looking at. They were actually hands-on in doing this. That does not happen in this. I mean, in the UK, that wouldn't be allowed, sadly. So it depends on variation. So I just gave abattoirs as an example, but it's quite a good example of how you could do some work from a QA perspective to show it. More difficult is veterinarians in practice. So your students will go off to see small animals in different parts of Spain or Portugal. How do you know? But you can do it by sending out notices and letters to the veterinarians in practice saying, this is what we want you to achieve. These are the learning outcomes we hope that your students, our students, will get when they're there. You may have a little box for them to tick that the student has done them. That's all QA. So look at what you're doing with EPT on the standards. More difficult, I think, is training them. It's very expensive. How can you get all the practitioners to come here? It's a very difficult one. At Bristol, we organise meetings, and what we do is we bribe them. We promise them some free continuing education, so they can come and get some of our experts to give them some lectures in small animal cardiology, which they will absolutely, they think, oh great, that's free.
How many external providers do you have?
In where?
Bristol.
Oh, Bristol. Oh.
How many?
Oh, as far as practice is concerned, what we do have, we have a system where...
how many providers do you have?
I have no idea on the number.
We have more or less 800.
Yeah, we couldn't train all of ours. We don't even begin to think that. We don't train providers. All we can do is that in our local environment we can try and involve those who are interested. There's no way we could train them. But in Bristol we do select practices. They can't, but in other vet schools in the UK they can go to anyone they want. In UK and also in America or Europe. Of course they can. You can't train everyone. But I think in your SER, if you can, even at a local level, do it, and then you can do it. But obviously, EasyVet doesn't expect you to train. But from a QA point of view, ENQA will say, well, this teaching is happening outside. Are you training that? And the answer is no, we're not. We're not. However, we maybe, for those who are really interested, we could provide maybe some training if they want. But interestingly, we talked about it this morning about the e-learning. I think what might happen is that EPT providers might be asked to do an e-learning course. And then, of course, we will be involving thousands. But whether we will say you have to pass an e-learning course before we will allow you to do our students is too soon to do that. But I can see how that might progress over the years, the future. One that you can do, though, is feedback. Do you have any feedback from the EPT providers back to the establishment? Sometimes it's the student has done really well and otherwise they haven't, but quite often they will have a form. The EPT provider will have a form that the student takes with them and the EPT provider has to fill in. That is QA. You've actually asked them to provide that. So feedback is provided. And then when the feedback comes back into the establishment, what do you do with it? Just get put in the filing cabinet? Or do you actually look at it? Is it analysed? Both for the individual student as well as for the year. Again, that's all QA. Right. So, yeah, question.
One question that sometimes we have is that we have practicals that are with all the group, external practicals, I mean, that all the group takes them by different rotations. And we also have lots of practicals that they select outside.
Yes.
Not in the group, only they choose one here and another there.
Yes.
So what's the importance of these external practices?
Well, that is, in a way, you've covered two things there. You've covered EPT, if the student chooses, I want to go and do that. That, to me, is pure EPT. They're making a decision to go there with all the different things that we talked about on it. All those different things involving feedback and effective management, that would come out of that. However, there might be things within the curriculum. On Thursday afternoon, the students have to go to a local farm, which is not owned by the university, but the farm is providing a teaching, or let's say pregnancy diagnosis in dairy cows, and you rely, and that is not EPT. To me, that is part of the curriculum, and that would have to be within the rules, the QA rules for the base curriculum, because it is every student has to do. It's mandatory that they do that practice in pregnancy diagnosis in cows. They have to do it, and you might not be able to do it on your farm, so you organise for them to go somewhere else. That is not what I call EPT. Is very much a voluntary, a student-driven decision on what they want to do, as opposed to the teacher saying you must do that.
So that means that it's better not all the students take them, because probably some students decide not to do this external practice.
Well, we can do for EPT, but if a student refused to have any learner skills or pregnancy diagnosis in cows, then they're going to fail on day one competencies. My view is that they shouldn't be qualified, because and they should be assessed that they have got that ability. And so it's day one competencies is, I know it's a general factor, and when you look at it, we're not asking to do pregnancy diagnosis in every species known to man. But what we are, I think what people are asking, if you look at it, is that they can do pregnancy diagnosis in the common animals, they can sex cats and kittens effectively, all the common things, and they have to be able to tick those off. And some of those you will not be able to do in your own faculty, your own school. You have to rely on external ones to do it. But I think there is a clear difference between EPT, which is a student-driven wish to specialise in this, as opposed to one within the main programme, curriculum, which you then has to be written in, and you have to have an agreement with the farm that does pregnancy diagnosis. And, you have to, because you can't say, I'm sorry, students can't come this year because I'm not weaning my cows. You know, that I think would be a deficiency in terms of what you're planning to do for it and what you're not delivering as a learning outcome. How's the time going? I'm going to stop there because it's nearly 1:45, because we've got several of the other standards to do it. So can we now break for a bit of lunch? Okay? If you're providing lunch, I hope so, somewhere. And then we'll come, after lunch, we'll come back, see how many of you survived. I'll count you and come back again.
Very quick lunch.
Yeah.
How many?
Maybe 30 minutes. It's lunch here, just outside? 30 minutes.
To
There's a lot. You all right? Yeah. And to be honest, I think as a result of this talk, I feel we have to put in some more information. I think Pierre would be worried about this, because you might say Pierre doesn't think so. So we need another week.